Hi, good afternoon. Hi. Welcome to an event organized by the Robert Zicklin Center for Corporate Integrity and the Field Center for Entrepreneurship. I'm David Rosenberg, director of the Zicklin Center and a professor in the law department here at Baruch. We're delighted to host a fireside chat with CUNY graduate Lew Frankfort, whose road to success story, as he tells it, is not only about entrepreneurial vision and hard work, but also about human emotions such as anxiety, pressure, and the fear of failure, something which has always motivated me. As such, I think that his experience will provide really good guidance for the many ambitious undergraduate business school students in the audience today, as well as lots of other people. Most of you will take home a copy of Lew's book, Bagman, the story behind the improbable rise of Coach. And I hope most of you managed to get a copy. I'm so happy that my colleague, Marlene Leekang, Executive Director of the Field Center, has agreed to moderate this talk with Lew. Please welcome Marlene.
Thank you so much, David. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. We're very excited to have this chat with Lew. So welcome, Lew. Thank you so much for spending the afternoon with us. I want to start a fun way for us to get to know you. Okay? We're going to do 2 truths and a lie. 2 truths and a lie about you. And we're going to let them guess which is the lie.
Okay. Give me a moment. I was an excellent student of public schools from the very beginning. I was commissioner of daycare and Head Start for the city of New York during the 70s. My father was a New York City policeman.
So what do you think? Which one's the lie? 1, 2, or 3? You can just say one's the lie?
One is a lie. I was a very late achiever, and my parents were effectively immigrants. I was the first person in my family to go to college. I had a speech impediment when I was a kid, and if it wasn't for my mother, who insisted that I stay in public school, I would have gone to a school for the speaking impaired, a public school. And when I was in the 9th grade, my guidance counselor said to me and my mother, his name is Schmutter, Mr. Schmutter, said to my mother that I should consider going to a trade school, a vocational school, because I wasn't college material. And when he said that, I thought, well, maybe he was right. But my mother quickly said, Lewis, the meeting is over. You're going to college. And I was embarrassed. I was 13 years old. There was a person of authority telling me I wasn't college material. My mother got up and walked out and told me to follow her, and which I did sheepishly.
It's interesting how certain moments in our life trigger the rest of the journey.
And we remember it.
Yes, vividly.
Emotionally.
Yes.
It was poignant.
So since we're starting at the very beginning, I'm going to give just a slight background for Lew. He was born and raised in New York. He's a Bronx man. He's a fellow CUNY alum, a Hunter grad. You were in the Army Reserves.
Yes.
Short stint on Wall Street as an analyst. We could talk a little bit about that. And then you were a City of New York government official with the Agency of Child Development. There's no fashion there. There's no brand development. There's no retail either. So tell us, when you transitioned from the public sector to a privately owned business that Coach was back then, a small business, what did you have to unlearn for you to be successful at leading Coach?
Nothing. In fact, my government experience prepared me really well for Coach. And I'll briefly share with you why. When I spent 10 years in city government, and the last 3+ years, I had the privilege and responsibility of trying to repair New York City's Head Start and daycare programs in the late 1970s during a city's fiscal crisis. And I felt really mission-driven to provide the best possible care for eligible children and families. So I saw them as my clients. So when I went to Coach, not knowing anything about brand or product or very much about how business ran, I focused on the customer. So I spent a lot of time trying to understand why people liked Coach, why they didn't like Coach, what attracted them to Coach, what did they think was special about Coach. And in one of those interviews, I actually pretended to be a Business Week freelance reporter while I was doing my research on whether I should go to this small handbag company. So I said that I was doing an article on Coach for Business Week. And I went to a store on 72nd Street, a handbag store, a specialty store, and I spoke to the owner who said, my customers love Coach. It's almost like a cult following. And that really resonated with me as a product of the 60s, to go to a company where I could feel some purpose to build upon the loyalty that people felt for Coach. And I subsequently, of course, got an education in all aspects of business. And I will say, through today, which is now more than 45 years since I joined Coach, when it was $6 million in sales, and now it's maybe $6 billion in sales. They are especially focused on consumers, especially Gen Z. And they take much more of a complete approach. We looked at values, attitudes, what made people tick, what made brands real, authentic, and the like.
So talking about business strategy, which is the customer approach, the profile, you provide a lot of different strategies in your book. You've used them to navigate all the different hats you wore at Coach. But you always return to the heart and soul of what Coach was for you, which was the people. With that in mind, how should leaders think about their responsibility to their stakeholders across the board? And that includes the customers, the people who work there, the board, the community itself.
When we say how should people think, I think people come to it from a lot of different places. When I joined Coach, it was at a point, this is in 1979, very few of you were even ideas at that time, and it was at a time when the middle class was growing rapidly. However, women had not yet really developed the level of passion and belief in brands that they have today. So when I thought about Coach, I thought that Coach really represented, in my mind, the best of America. Real leather, authentic. There was a grit, a focus to it. The bags got better with time. And when I thought about what Coach could be one day, I thought of the concept of a democratized luxury brand, a brand that would be affordable to 40 or 50% of America, unlike the European luxury brands. And part of the way I got there was to study brands around the world, and I admired this fancy small European brand called Louis Vuitton. And they controlled their own destiny. At the time, they only had 20 stores in the world, but they controlled the presentation, they trained their own staff, and I thought to myself that we could become an egalitarian version of LV. We have no history of luxury brands in America, none, because we're a country of immigrants. So in the 18th century and the 19th century, when Gucci and Prada and LV and many other brands that were born, or early 20th century, we didn't have the wealth to even contemplate supporting them, meaning as a society.
So the way that you were looking at all of these strategies to build Coach, one of the things that you talk about quite often in your book is about magic plus logic. Can you tell us more about this and how you used it day to day?
Okay, when I use the term magic and logic, so magic is art, and logic might be science. So some people say art and science, and we coined the term magic and logic for Coach. And when I think of the magic side, and this really is for people starting businesses and in businesses, you need to have belief in possibilities. You need to really have a North Star. And so that to me is magic. You also need to be infinitely curious. Curiosity is not a logical thing. It's a magical thing where your mind can take you in many different places. And even when you're very successful, that's the time that where you need to be most challenging and not get complacent. So curiosity is an incredible, important factor. A third factor is instinct. Trying to understand holistically, both from your gut and from observations, what is possible. So when we talk about magic, the lead things are just, again, belief in possibilities, infinite curiosity. You also need to be able to be adaptive. Magic is not following a formula. You need to be nimble. You need to be resourceful. And on the logic side, what I think a great deal about is collaboration. We need to learn how to collaborate. Unless we're fortunate enough to be in teams growing up where we generally think about ourselves and not the greater good. So collaboration is something that's learned, and at Coach, from the very beginning, we focused on helping all of us learn how to be better listeners, better collaborators. A second aspect of logic is a greater good mindset. So when I talk about a greater good mindset, thinking of the enterprise, not just your role, and having a big picture sense. And that it helps you developmentally. It also helps you be successful in businesses. Also, a blend of magic and logic, and I could say there's logic in magic, and there's magic, and there's logic and magic, and magic and logic, both ways.
I'm glad you brought up the greater good. As I read your book, I actually admired that that perspective for you? And you mentioned that very early on about your early perspectives. And when we talk about the greater good and that mindset, we talk about doing good through your business as well.
Yes.
Right? So were there moments where doing the right thing conflicted with doing what was easy or profitable? And where was there balance for you for this to happen?
Okay. It's a great question. So as far as the product is concerned, you can never compromise. And Coach went through various ownerships. So I worked for the founder for 6 years, from 1979 to 1985. And he was paternalistic. He was a single leader. Everyone else was, if you think of hubs and spokes, he was a hub and everyone else was a spoke. I was a spoke until I built much of the new revenue channels, and I became more than a spoke, which led him ultimately to sell to a conglomerate, which I introduced him to, called the Sara Lee Corporation. And there were many times when I was with Sara Lee, which was my big parent in Chicago, and we were based here on 34th Street, where I had to say, no, I'm not going to do it. So as an example, one time they wanted me to sell to J.C. Penney's when we were growing the business. And now J.C. Penney, all of you are aware of it, it's gone through a lot of bankruptcies. It's hardly here, and it probably won't be here in 10 or 20 years. But at the time, in the 1980s, it was a very strong, big mass brand. And Sara Lee wanted me to sell to J.C. Penney because J.C. Penney said they would promote some other mass brands if they could get a high-end brand. And at the time, we were struggling to develop our Macy's business and our Nordstrom's business and Bloomingdale's, and it would have been incompatible. They also discount, and you can't control it. And I basically said no, and in the nicest possible way, and I recognized they could have fired me, but they went elsewhere to look for other ways to get into J.C. Penney. There were times when we were part of Sara Lee where we did not inform them when we made decisions on behalf of our employees. So, for example, even though we had a union contract among union workers, we paid them above scale, but we also respected that even paying them above scale sometimes wasn't enough. And we would provide special bonuses outside the contract and the alike. When we went public in the year 2000, we gave an equity grant to every single employee in the company, every single factory worker, warehouse worker, and leader. And through today, Coach has an equity program that extends to every single store manager in the world. And part of my view is to push wealth down so that people can come up. That's part of my life's view. And I believe those of us at the top have more than enough. And we should give back in every way we can.
So what I'm hearing is that you really put this mindset of the greater good back into the people who contributed to what the success of Coach was. Would that go into your definition of good leadership? And what would you say is your definition of good leadership?
When I think of good leadership, I think of a leadership that is authentic, that is consistent, that is value-driven, that's transparent, and provides growth opportunities for people, whether it's through classes, courses, internal promotions. That to me It's value-driven leadership. And it doesn't mean that you may not go, you will still go through adversity and you will still make good decisions, but you can build a culture where people want to be there. And I would urge all of you, to the extent that you have options when you graduate, try to find a situation where you have belief in the leadership, belief in the product or service that's being provided, and do your very best job you can, whether it's your ultimate destiny or not. Work hard, do your best you can, and understand life is a journey, and it really isn't a destination.
So, for those of you who will read The Bagman, in there you contribute a funny story about former New York City Mayor, then Congressman Ed Koch, allegedly says that you were too principled for another New York City government role that you were up for. Did you take that as an insult or a compliment?
I took it as a compliment. The work we did at Daycare and Head Start fortunately restored credibility to the program, and we were able to get additional funding and renewed funding and additional funding. And I was a candidate to basically run what is called civil service office, which meant union negotiations and the alike. And I really believe there's a term that is still used sometimes called a meritocracy. I'm very performance driven, whether you're in the not-for-profit side or the profit side. I'm about defining what success looks like and always keeping in mind the people you're serving, and then developing the strategies and plans to make it happen. And I had and Ed Koch passed me over for the job. And I actually told some people about what occurred, and it made it to the press. And I stayed friendly with Ed Koch through his whole life. He denied that he told me what I'm about to tell you, which was, I went into his office and I said, how could you pass me up for this job? And because the person he appointed was not at all qualified. It was a political appointment, and was not concerned with the greater good of the city of New York or the people. And he said to me, Lew, to be frank, you're too principled. And that meant to me that he felt he could not trust me if he asked me to do something which I felt was significantly outside of the boundaries of what I would do in good conscience. I wouldn't do it. So that led me to actually leave city government. And I had an experience with the mayor that made him feel that way, because when he was a congressman, he came to my office, and when I was running Daycare and Head Start, and he asked me to, let me step back. It was a very difficult time. The city was in bankruptcy. There was a lot of fraud and abuse within the program. There were not adequate controls, and I had the responsibility of trying to figure out how to keep the most kids in care that I could. And that meant defunding or closing some of the community-based programs. And the long and short of this story is he came to me to urge me to support a program outside of his district and had no interest in what the facts were. In this particular case, only 15% of the children were eligible for the care that they received, which meant 85% either did not disclose income or had family incomes above the cutoffs. They were not serving the population in need. And it was actually it was the worst program of all 435 programs. And when I said that to him, he basically said, I hear you, I want the program saved, and you walked out. So we have that leadership in Washington today. That's it, of course.
You're quite a reflective person that comes across your book very often. You're very reflective of your own strengths, your own weaknesses. Throughout those reflections, you always come back to this concept of fear of failure. Now, you talk about how it manifests physically, emotionally, mentally, and even how it affected your own health. There's so many college students in this room, myself included, and how this fear of failure resonates so close to all of us. Can you share how you managed these feelings, combated them, and after all the success you've had, and you look back now, has it changed? Has it changed?
Me?
The concept and how you deal.
Great question. The construct of fear of failure. So I came from a working class family. My family only wanted me to go to college and live the American dream. That was what they wanted me to do. Their families had come from, in my case, Eastern Europe. And like many of you, or most of you, your families have come from different countries. And America offers incredible opportunity even today, and it will offer more opportunity when we have more responsible, caring people in the White House. The reality is that I always had so I wasn't a good student. I blossomed in high school, and I got better, and I continued to improve as a student. And I developed a drive to do the best I could. I call it a drive for excellence. But my fear of failure is still with me at my current age. So let me say, I still have failure dreams. I wake up not with the level of sweat that I did 40 or 50 years ago or 20 years ago, where I would wake up completely soaked because I would have these realistic dreams of what my life would be like. And there was basically, I dreamt in the early years about poverty, about not being able to afford to own a home, not being able to buy another meal, not being able to make ends meet. And as the years went by, the dreams changed, but they still existed. Now, I will say that I have the comfort in my dreams of knowing that they're not real as soon as I wake up, most of the time. When I would wake up 30, 50, 60 years ago, they were real. And I will tell you, part of the reason I wrote the book was really to talk to your generation and millennials in an authentic, honest way. So I've had my real ups and downs and depressive episodes when I magnified my own failures to the point that I was feeling like I was an imposter at certain times. I was losing my mojo, and I particularly during high stress periods, and I had to really develop techniques to cope with them so that I just didn't turn into a puddle and stay under the covers all day, because I couldn't stay under the covers all day. And I think some of you know what I mean about, some of you are nodding in agreement about low periods. So exercise became a key way for me to deal with stress. And I started to diligently exercise very early. And on top of exercise, I subsequently began to look at ways that I could compartmentalize work and be really completely focused on other things. So I developed a habit 30 years ago of playing speed chess through Yahoo, which still exists, and there's actually 500,000 people around the world that play speed chess. Anyone play speed chess online?
I think my son does.
Your son does. So in any event, I would play 5-minute games and I would be riveted. And I encourage you to develop pastimes that are constructive and positive for you. You need to listen to your body. If your body aches, it's either because there's too much stress, not enough sleep, not enough balance in your life. Working out really is incredibly good, not only for your physical health, but your mental health. So working out, massage, meditation, compelling interests. And I do a lot of philanthropic work, completely philanthropic, and immersing yourself in other things as well. I would also encourage you to be open to therapy and be open to practitioners. Be open to meds. Meds can help, and there's no reason that you should not be open to it. But you need to take care of your body, and you need to listen to it. It won't lie to you.
What's one piece of advice you think young leaders don't hear enough?
Well, if we're talking first entrepreneurial leaders, I would say it takes more than a great product idea to have a successful business. And I meet young entrepreneurs all the time because currently we invest, I'm part of a group family office, and we invest in early stage consumer-facing brands, what we actually call disruptive brands. But we made a decision, for the most part, to invest post-revenue rather than in a speculative friends and family round, because there's a much greater likelihood of success. But I advise people frequently. I went to graduate school at Columbia and University Business School, and I'm on their Entrepreneurship Advisory Council, and I go to a lab at a WeWork, and I speak to young people in their early, mid, late 20s who are starting businesses, and everyone has a great product idea. That could be a service, a platform, or a physical product, but they haven't adequately thought about the size of the market, the barriers to entry, the storytelling that's required, the funding that's needed, and you need a holistic view.
A holistic view. I think that's a great way for us to get to our last question as we wrap this up. Every so often in the Bagman, you reflect about Coach's legacy, and you still leave the question unanswered or not fully answered. Why is that? And do you see your legacy tied to Coach's?
When I was with Coach, and I mentioned effectively that I was an instant believer in what Coach was and what it could be if we were earnest and we worked hard and we listened to all of our constituencies and being curious and adaptable and having imagination and thinking of possibilities and bringing together a microcosm of the best of America. And we built a very strong team with very high levels of belief to really build Coach into something much larger than it was. I never dreamt at various stages that we would reach this level until Coach was a public company with sales of north of $1 billion. And it was clear to me when we were in our 6th decade and people still loved us, and that we had an opportunity to become a legacy brand. And I remember once visiting a store that we opened in San Juan one weekday morning, I try to go, if I want to do staff meetings at stores, I try to do it when the stores aren't busy and I could talk with the entire staff. And I came shortly after the store opened. And there were 4 people from the same generation buying Coach: a great-grandmother, a grandmother, a mother, and the daughter, 16 to over 80. And I was with them and I thought my job was complete. Coach is a legacy brand, and there's no better testimony than its performance in the last 6 or 7 years. The way I felt about Coach is the way the current leaders feel about Coach. We feel that we're stewards of the brand. We don't own the Coach brand. It belongs to everyone: the investors, the customers, the employees, the communities. And we're stewards. We're responsible for bringing the brand forward. Most leaders in my position take the view they own it, and they can build it in any way they want, even if there's other shareholders. And we see that throughout the world consistently. And it becomes more dangerous with AI in the digital world.
That's a great segue to let's talk to this audience about
Sure.
what would you like to ask Lew? There are microphones in the back, so feel free to step up to a microphone and we'll take some questions. There has to be questions. Go to a microphone.
And you might want to just mention your first name and what you're studying, if you would. It's not on.
Is it not on? Rocky's coming. Check the other one, Russell.
Hi, Mr. Frankfort. Thank you so
You
much.
can call me Lew.
Hi, Lew. Thank you for being here with us today. I'm Alejandra. I'm studying finance at Baruch, and I actually launched my own cosmetics brand. It's called Alej Cosmetics, and I do think I'm definitely a disruptor when it comes to beauty. So I wanted to ask you, when you're taking a look at businesses, what signals to you that a brand is really disruptive and not just competing with what's currently in the market? Thank you.
It's a great question, and my answer is going to be subtle. In order to really understand the concept, your concept, one of the things I would do as a prospective investor is talk with you about what distinguishes your product from other products. And we would talk about the competition. We would talk about whether the distinctiveness is sustainable. One of the challenges many businesses face, particularly as the cosmetics industry is as large and the barriers to entry are not great, is that there's lots of competition and lots of turnover. And you need to be, I would look for focus and real clarity and consumer acceptance and retention. So when I look at a post-revenue business that's e-commerce or Amazon or online, what I really try to focus on is that group of consumers who bought it once and come back, and try to understand whether they're coming back with enough frequency and enough belief that you can really grow a business. One of the big challenges in the world today among established businesses, I'll give you for example, department stores, the Macy's of the world. They were 30% of sales in 1980. Today, they're 8%. Department stores will be 5% one day, and that 5% will be 50% online. And their consumers getting older every year, 11 months. So the average age of a Nordstrom's consumer, Nordstrom's, everyone knows Nordstrom's, believe it or not, is 51 years old. None of you do your major shopping, or very few of you in department stores. So trying to understand the channels where you sell as well. Good luck to you.
Go ahead.
Hello?
Is it on?
Is it on? Hello?
Yes,
Okay.
it's on.
I'll be a little closer, sorry. I just want to say hello, thank you so much. My name is Medina Amber. I'm currently studying Masters in Finance at Baruch, with also a background in operations. I just want to say I'm so happy to be here as someone who bought their very first Coach item. So definitely, I'm starting that legacy that you mentioned earlier. And also, I really appreciate your answer about ambition and fear. So as a student leader, I was wondering, just looking back to sum up what was mentioned earlier, what early career decision had the greatest long-term impact on your leadership trajectory? Something that might have not seemed important at first.
Something that would not.
Something that wasn't important at first.
What part of your career made the best impact for you long term, but at first when you made that decision didn't seem so important?
That's a terrific question. I'm debating between two, and I'll mention both. My decision to go to work in city government, even within that 10 years I spent in city government, it took me about 6 years in different positions to find the right position, which was, in my case, daycare and Head Start, because it was so purpose-driven, and I had enough autonomy so I could control that. I never expected when I started in city government that I would ever have that responsibility, particularly at a very young age. I was 29 when I became the head of it. The other was when I joined Coach. I didn't know an invoice from a packing slip, and little did I understand. When I joined Coach, it was $6 million in sales, and the founder sold to anyone who paid their bills. And over the next 6 years, I started a mail order business in Coach stores, which became bigger even in those 6 years than the business was in the existing channels. So you never know when you start something where you can travel. You have an interesting split major, fashion and finance. Did I hear that right?
It's finance, but I also had a background in operations. But I do like fashion or creativeness.
Fashion and operations, yes. And so what I said earlier, wherever you go, do the very best you can. And if you don't like the place, choose the right time to leave, but don't let others know. You got to challenge yourselves, and it sometimes takes. I know people in their 40s and 50s who are now just finding their place, and your generation is very similar in many ways to my generation, the 60s, in that you question everything, you value authenticity, you don't have a high tolerance for bullshit. The election results in the city were terrific, with 2 million people voting for mayor. It just says to me that there's hope in this world, that we will get out those people who really care only about themselves, which was my hope, was unrealized, of course, considering where we are in the 20s. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Russell, can you move your questions to the middle, because this pole is blocking our view for you. There you go.
Hello, Lew. My name is Ruslan. I am a data science and mathematics student, and I wanted to thank you on behalf of the Entrepreneurship Center, the Field Center, Baruch Collegiate Entrepreneurs Organization, and the Department of Entrepreneurship.
I'm happy to be here.
We're happy you're happy. My question for you is, in the business world, and especially in leadership positions, you are often faced with ethical dilemmas, such that sometimes ethics get in the way of profitability or business interests. And it's a tough decision to make. How do you go about the decision-making process in these types of situations, considering that you're a principled man, as we heard today?
It's a great question, and I think about what I would do today. I think of Jeff Bezos, who sold out to Trump. Let's start there. And I ask myself, would I do the same thing if I were in his position? And the answer, I'd like to say no, and I believe the answer is no, but I mean, particularly if I was the third or the 100th richest person in the world, leaving all of that aside. So it's hard for me I will say that my values won't allow me to do things that are antithetical to my values. So you have to pick and choose the issues that are important. But you need to create, let me say, Bezos, and I'm going to use Bezos just as an example, he lost all of his credibility with his teams. If you look at all of the people that have resigned in government, people who are career committed people, whether they're in the Justice Department, Health and Human Services, who couldn't abide, I believe I would have been one of those people to have left. I never had to compromise my values at Coach, not at all. I had to negotiate when we had a parent company, certain things, and certain things I kept from them and did what I thought was right. On other times I confronted them. It's very difficult when you're, but again, authenticity and consistency are essential values of good leaders, and staff and people are smart, and if you're going to go outside of who you are, they're going to see that you're being inconsistent and that you're a phony ultimately.
Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, Mr. Frankfort. So
It's a little
my name
low
is
for me.
Speak up.
Good afternoon, Mr. Frankfort. So my name is Abdul, and I'm an entrepreneurship major. I was a biological science major in high school, and so I was just wondering, I've always been taught that failure teaches you more than any success, and so what is one mistake you made as CEO of Coach that taught you more than success you've had?
Well, first, I made many mistakes, and you're right. You learn more from your mistakes than right decisions. I made mistakes on people, and that helped shape how I learned to interview people to reduce the likelihood of mistakes. We decided to acquire a very small brand, Mark Cross, which is still in existence. It's an accessories brand because I thought that it would complement Coach. It was a higher end brand, an American brand, very small. And what we learned in the first 12 months was that 50% of the sales were from existing Coach consumers. So we really weren't building our franchise. And that small investment told me that we should really just grow the Coach business, as an example.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Sardor. I'm a finance major, and nice to meet you. It was a pleasure to hear your story, and I read a little about your book, and it was a very interesting book. I recently finished Phil Knight's memoir about Nike, and a question I wanted to ask is, as markets and consumer behavior change so quickly, what core fundamentals do you believe will always matter when building a successful business?
First is listening to your consumers. So when we talk about change, from my early days as coach, I took an anthropological approach, thinking of the total person. So trying to understand where the person was 3 years ago, where they are today, to help me understand where they're traveling and then anticipate where they're going to be in 3 to 5 years and be there when they get there. And much of our growth strategies around the country and around the globe were based upon watching behavior of consumers. So, and again, curiosity, which I said is on the magic side, being infinitely curious is absolutely critical. A second is being nimble. So adaptability is not something that is logical if you're going to make a big pivot, but it's sometimes necessary, and being able to understand when you're going to really pivot. A lot of brands and companies run into trouble because they lost touch with the customer, meaning they haven't innovated enough, they haven't understood the competitive marketplace, they haven't understood the new generations coming up. Gen Z today represents 15% of the world's spend. In 15 years, it will represent 40%. And so it's hard for me to imagine, if I was running a department store, as an example, that I would be focused on my existing customers. I would be trying to figure out how I could reinvent my store to attract young people. Or I would decide that I couldn't and that we should basically downsize and the like.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, go ahead, Marlene, go.
Can you remove that?
Yes.
Great.
Hi, Luke. My name is Mayneli, and I'm currently a digital communications major. I wanted to ask you, how do you manage your private life and working life when it was getting too hard? And what is your advice when those hard times happen in like a company?
Maybe you could paraphrase if you heard fully.
So, how do you balance that working life, the stressful parts of your life, and when it all hits the fan, pretty much?
With difficulty. So nothing is easy. Take nothing for granted. I'm living the American dream, and I feel blessed and very fortunate. And I want all of you to have the opportunity to become the best version of yourselves, because we need you to be, so this country can prosper in future generations.
To save us. Thank you.
Hi, Lou. I'm Basmala. I'm a Master's of Finance student at Baruch. And I first want to express my admiration for how you went about talking to your customers and really getting to know them. My question is a bit on the lighter side. I want to ask for your chess ELO and if you would be down to play chess with me in the future.
She wants to play chess.
Yeah.
Ah.
And how's your chess level? Is it good?
My
What would you
chess
say?
level, your chess level may be higher than mine.
Really?
So I play for sport.
Okay.
I play for
Okay,
sport.
maybe we
I've been
should-
contemplating getting a tutor for 20 years and haven't done so, but I might one day.
I'll send you my son.
Your son can help me. You might be able to help
Okay,
me
well
too.
then we'll have a match in the future.
Well, thank
Reach
you.
out. Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll trade chess handles.
Hi. Sorry, this feels a little weird. A little short. Try to.
Yeah, there you go.
Hi, my name is Luz Mary. I'm currently a senior. We'll be graduating this semester. Super excited about that. Thank you, Lou, for coming. Also, Marilyn, for hosting this. Really appreciate this. So I will be incoming investment banking analyst in the consumer retail group starting this summer.
Maybe you.
And I was just wondering, what is kind of your investment strategy for Bivilo Group, which is where you're currently at? I know right now a lot of kind of PE firms or VC firms are investing in high growth disruptor brands that are leaning into more clean lifestyle, or getting that that audience and a Gen Z audience, Gen Alpha potentially, as Gen Z right now is actually currently driving a lot of coach sales right now. And I saw like a really well developed CNBC report So I was wondering, what's kind of your insight, your outlook for 2026?
Well, it's a good question. First, there's opportunity everywhere. And more than 10 years ago, I invested in a company, a beverage company as an example, that wanted to create a healthy alternative to Gatorade, because Gatorade, until the last 2 or 3 years, lots of artificial ingredients. And we invested very early in a brand called Body Armor, which which actually came in as a intruder and helped grow a mature category. So there's sometimes growth in mature categories. There are trends in the United States that clearly are not reversible, and that's around health and wellness. And to your point, your comments earlier, and there's lots of opportunities, but you need to really be very careful, because even in these categories where there's high growth, the success rate is no more than 10%. 1 out of 10 businesses being alive 5 years after it starts. So entrepreneurs need to be real careful and thoughtful with that 360 view that I mentioned about everything that's required.
Thank you.
Hey, Lou.
Oh, hey.
Nice to meet you. So my name is Joshua, and I'm a biology student. And being a biology student, I've always wanted to do work that was more than just me. You know, have an impact on people's lives on levels I wouldn't have dreamed. But dreaming that big also implies that I have a fear, like many of my peers, to fail, and have my work fail and not really succeed. So my question is, if you were to take one advice, because I know you've mentioned it in your book, what advice would you give that could really help you keep on track with like your mission, or any mission really, and keep going forward?
Okay. A realistic mindset. It's very hard for entrepreneurs to have a realistic mindset of their own business. Because I said on the magic side, you need to have belief. You need to be curious. You need to have a North Star. And if you have all of those, sometimes your listening skills aren't that great to understand things you might need to do differently. So I encourage entrepreneurs to find mentors, to be, again, curious, but find mentors, find advisors, be open to adapting. You may think you know the answer, but I've learned over a lifetime, if you think you know the answer, you probably don't, because there's always some gray. So you gotta force yourself to be adaptable and realistic lens. It's not often that entrepreneurs have them. And when businesses don't go well and the founders are desperate, they often will say anything. Even with a data room, they will say things that are not true, not because they're lying, but because they can't help themselves, in my mind, because they're so committed to their idea. It's very hard to maintain a realistic mindset. So I start by saying, have that. And you need to have, second, you need to have benchmarks. You need to have measurements, metrics that you're going to use to evaluate how you're doing. You can't just say, well, you know, the economy was rough, or there was tariffs, or there was this. You need to challenge yourself always with metrics. You need benchmarks to measure how you're doing.
Thank you.
If you didn't know, Lew is a data guy. So the benchmarks and the measurable
Yes.
places for your business growth is really important, and especially was an important strategy for you for Coach.
And it continues to be. And that's the blend of magic and logic.
Hi, Lew. My name is Stacy Zhu. I'm
Speak up,
studying
honey.
biology, and I've been developing a strong interest in business. I wanted to thank you for being here. My mother and grandmother have been loyal Coach customers for a long time, so your work has been a big part of my life in a meaningful way. You mentioned that fear of failure played a big role for you when you were younger. Looking back, do you feel that
You may
fear
have to
ever
help
held
me
you
there.
back from taking risks you now wish you have taken?
Have you ever felt that fear of failure holding you back from taking a risk or any risk?
I need to reflect upon that. I would say in my early days, your age is when I had no choice but to work. And I found myself in government before I got to this Head Start daycare job. I often had bosses I didn't respect, which was really hard for me to be in a situation where I had someone who was above me, generally very senior, who I felt wasn't value driven, who was a vacationer, just was waiting for the weekend, and here I am trying to improve services in the city of New York. So I suffered fools rather than risk being fired when saying that if I ever get to that position, I'm going to behave very differently. So I had people that I worked for that were mentors in certain areas, but also I learned how I would not be if I were in their situation. So that's why I said very early, you need to do the best you can in any situation until you leave. And there's no saying otherwise.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hello.
My name is Julia Panas. I am an international business major and currently interning at Giorgio Armani. And I wanted to ask you a little more personal question. So given that we're all students, I think we can all agree that lifelong learning is high priority, very important. So I wanted to ask you, how do you continue growing intellectually throughout your career? Or to put it more simply, are there any books or publications you've been reading lately that you might recommend?
Okay. I will confess that I haven't done much reading of business books, even though I just completed a memoir. But I will say there's a lot to learn from books, and there's a lot to learn from life. I've always been a student of the human condition, whether it's in any group I am. I observe, like you all observe. I'm curious about what makes people tick, what doesn't, what drives them. And so I talked about anthropology. So through the decades where my learning came largely from curiosity, pursuing different possibilities, a team environment where we would push each other to be better versions of ourselves, where we had a set of common beliefs and values. Early on, we created for Coach a mission statement before they became stylish or before companies were small. And when companies were large, they all have mission statements. But you need to follow what you believe. And you can build great teams, and you can do great work. And you can have great people that will follow you.
Thank you. That's great advice.
Hi, Lew.
Hello.
My name is Sashana, and I'm majoring in journalism here at Baruch College. And before I ask my question, I wanted to let you know that when I was getting ready this morning, I decided to use my Coach perfume today. And it's one of my favorite perfumes now.
Great.
Well,
Thank you.
on to my question. It's what are techniques that help something sell in marketing? And also, if you're face-to-face with people curious about your brand, how do you convince someone what you're selling is worth their money?
Second question. Go back to your first one.
What are techniques that help something sell in marketing?
What are some techniques that help sell in marketing? And the second question was, sorry, say it again.
How do you convince someone what you're selling is worth their money?
Yeah. How are you convincing folks that what you have is worth their bucks?
Okay, so in my mind, there's two aspects to both questions. One is on the product or service side, really understanding the equities of your product and your brand, starting with are any of you familiar with a brand equity table? I'm not. So when we talk about brands, if you think of a pyramid, and you divide it into two lines horizontal, the lowest is underlying equities, so belief in the company, belief in its values. Then the product itself does it do the job it's supposed to do? Do people like it? Is it distinctive? Those are sort of what we call fundamental equities. And then there's aspirational equities, which are the emotions that build lasting impressions for brands. Storytelling is really important. And when we talk about Gen Z, what is really amazing to me is how quickly they have embraced different ways to shop than their parents and their older siblings. YouTube, TikTok, instant gratification, storytelling that is authentic and real. So you need to really understand how consumers think about your product, not just a year ago, but today, and look at the change in their attitude. So at Coach, we had leading indicators that tell us that we were not going to be as hot as we were a year from now. About 4 years ago, Coach decided, Todd Kahn and Stewart, they would focus on Gen Z for all the right reasons. And they went back to the past to go to the future to really create product that would resonate in value and quality and durability and cachet, including selling products that are used in terms of recycling materials, in terms of giving back. So everything depends on the situation. But on the marketing side, authenticity is the way to build something that's lasting. People are smart. And a lot of brands like Kate Spade's in a lot of trouble. Michael Kors took 8-hour lunch for a few years, the Coach brand, but no, they're nowhere because they just came and they didn't really build, they did not serve multiple generations. They came up like that and they went down like this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, Lou. My name is Erica Ross.
Hello, Erica.
Yeah, I'm not in this generation. I'm more of a Gen X in early stage, trying to focus on a business that's geared around professional services. So I want to ask you, with that context, if you and I were having a conversation and I'm like, Lou, there's a lot of talk around AI and technology, and I'm looking at the landscape of where things are going. Should I focus more on building community and relationships, or should I really throw myself into focusing on AI and getting that under my belt first? Because I'm trying to see which tools and skills I need to really build up so I could lay a foundation for myself for success, looking at today's culture and the landscape of businesses and entrepreneurs.
That's a great question. So first I would begin by asking you to think about where your superpowers are, where your particular strengths are. And if it's with community and organization and people, I would say, number one, lean into your strengths. Lean into your strengths. Second, I would say, develop a sufficient working knowledge, not to be an expert, a working knowledge in these other areas to understand how they could potentially influence the work you're doing, whether it's in the community or a not-for-profit organization, whatever it might be, over the next 3 to 5 years. And if you were also thinking about an engineering career, I would say be careful, because AI, from a processing perspective, is going to eliminate a lot of jobs that very smart people were able to have, and layoffs are in the thousands and tens of thousands at Google and Apple and all of those places, because machines have been able to replace them. Machines cannot replace community and organization and your superpowers.
Thank you. Thank you for confirming what I was thinking. Thank you.
All right. These are going to be our last questions, the two here, okay?
Hi, Lou. My name is Lauren Carmona. I'm currently a senior working in marketing. And my question to you is, I'm pretty interested in your early on role in Coach and how your mission at the time at Coach transitioned into becoming the CEO and how that mission changed in the process.
Well, when I joined Coach, as I said earlier, we had a wholesale business. We basically sold to anyone who paid their bills. And back then, there were many, many more specialty stores in America that focused in accessories. The specialty stores were largely killed by the department stores, and subsequently the big boxes killed other neighborhood and stores. I was very clear from the very beginning of my days that if we developed a relationship directly with the consumer, not through intermediaries, we would have a better control of our destiny. And with the founders' encouragement, I started a mail order business, which was very successful. And I started a retail store business. We were the first American manufacturer to open a freestanding store in New York City. When I say American manufacturers, including Ralph Lauren and Nike, sold in third-party retails. We didn't have our own channels. It was before omni-channels came about. So we were a pioneer at Coach in multi-channel businesses. So that learning and that success allowed me to catapult my career and enabled the founder to sell the business at the age of 65 to a big American company who thought they could learn from Coach because their brands were still only being sold through wholesale channels.
Thank you.
Thank you. And this is going to be our last question.
Hi, Lew. It's Stacy again. What qualities did you prioritize most when choosing people for key leadership roles, and how did you spot these traits early on?
What priorities did you have for choosing people for key leadership roles? And what was the second part to that?
How did you spot it early on?
How did you spot those qualities early on?
It's a great question. And from the very beginning of even when I was in government, I looked for people who had good values, people that cared about other people. I also looked for people who were optimistic, did not walk around with a dark cloud over their head. I also looked for people who were curious and open-minded and who saw gray in things. Rigidity is the enemy of growth. But seeing things black and white where the world is all shades of gray, from very almost black to almost white, and understanding. So I focused a lot on trying to understand the essence of the person, including work ethic, and whether they were purpose-driven, and whether I thought they could learn, were curious, open-minded to learn, as opposed to being rigid that they knew everything about whatever subject they were part of. So that was a screen for everyone, all the way down to part-time help in Coach stores during the season when it was busy. We wanted people who liked people, who cared, who were curious, and who had good energy. And on top of that, if they passed that screen, I would really focus on the skill set and the experience they had. But in the first 15 or 30 minutes of an interview, if I felt they weren't going to fit into the culture or they weren't going to be adaptable to the greater good, I basically said they weren't for us.
Thank you so much.
So that was a lovely way for us to wrap this up.
Oh, thank you.
I want to thank you so much for spending this time with us. I hope that you all found value in this. I know that I continue to learn to be a leader, and this was very helpful. So I thank you so much for that.
Well, I want to just say in closing, the book was a real effort for me. I mean, it took almost 2 years. I was doing other things, granted, and I worked with a great person. And because I had to get in touch with my failures from the 90s and 80s, we interviewed over 80 people. But a day like today makes it all worthwhile for me because you are the future of this country. And and you can control a lot of who you're going to be and how we will be shaped as a society. So I'm spending my time not at book clubs, but speaking at universities to young people who are authentic and value-driven and want to live the American dream. So I wish all of you the very best luck. And stay true to your purpose. It's about authenticity, relationships, and purpose, value-driven.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Thank you, Lew's team. It was wonderful.
Well, thank you.
Thank you to Rocky, and David for putting this together. Thank you for my own team for here to be supportive of this, and thank you all for being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's very enjoyable. Thank you, everyone.
So Lew has a little bit of time. He will mix, mingle, and chat with all of you if you have time to be here, and for as long as your team says you have.
Yes.
So
Okay, well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
I enjoyed it.